So welcome to Untangled, where we untangle Christianity from theology, religion, and colonization. And in this lesson, we're dealing with the question of why we should be able to look at the Bible and all of Christianity through an African lens. And we're using today the biblical reason. And the biblical reason I know for many of you all is the most important one. So to start and understand this, we have to look at Genesis chapter 10. You see, we know that God calls Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. But before he does that, there's some really key things that we need to learn in Genesis chapter 10. And so if you're reading Genesis chapter 10, you get to verse 6, where this really interesting thing happens. It names 4 countries, and it says these are the Hamitic countries, and it names Egypt, Cush, Put, and Canaan. And these are areas that covered kind of the Middle East and Fertile Crescent and down into Africa. But what's really interesting is when you get down to verse 8, you find out about this son of Cush. Now, if you know anything about the nation of Cush, it was a flourishing nation in Africa. But there's a son of Cush named Nimrod. So we know he was a Cushite. And Nimrod built all these different countries. It says he was a great hunter and he built all these different countries. And one of the countries he built was this place called Shinar. Now we know that Shinar actually is found in southern Mesopotamia. And the reason that that's important is because when we flip over to Genesis chapter 12 and Genesis chapter 11, and we find Abraham, he's living in Ur of the Chaldees. And so if you look and you Google Ur of the Chaldees, what you immediately find is that Ur of the Chaldees was actually in southern Mesopotamia. And so we can understand that southern Mesopotamia, as we understood it, Shinar was actually built by a son of Cush, which was Nimrod, who came out of Africa. And so when we run into Abraham in Genesis 12, he's living in a society that was built by a son of Cush, or built by someone who came out of Africa. And so his understanding of God, of the world, of culture, of spirituality, all of that would have been informed by the land he was living in. And the land he was living in was built by a son of Cush who came out of Africa. So in essence, Abraham's view of the world, God, spirituality, and what later became Christianity after it became Judaism was based off of what we find in the land of Cush, which is in Africa. And so because of that, we should be able to look at the understanding of Abraham and everything on with the background of knowing that it came from the land of Cush in Africa. And so we can use an African lens to examine our Christianity.